So we're here today with Paul A. Young. He's had a long and illustrious career, and I don't even think that does it justice, to be honest. Oh. We thought while you're here, we'd like to ask you a few questions kind of about your career, chocolate and so forth, but kind of casting your mind right back to when you started with chocolate 20 odd years ago. What made you want to work with chocolate originally?
Well, I am an accidental chocolatier, great name for my next book. I haven't got a next book coming, but that's probably what it should be called, because I was a pastry chef for a long time for Marco Pierre White, and I used great chocolate. Then I was a product developer creating Marks and Spencer, Chinese takeaway range, Japanese food, then a product manager for Sainsbury's doing pizzas, then back to being a pastry chef. So that sandwich of working with big manufacturers taught me the background of business and product development and technical and packaging. Going back into the restaurant brought me up to date with the food at the time, the desserts and pastry at the time. Then I took the decision to go freelance. I had just had enough of working those restaurant hours, and I started to play with chocolate myself. And that came off the back of doing food festivals when they started to become really popular in the early 2000s. And Chantal Cody, who used to own Rococo Chocolates, she's now creative director, she asked me if I'd create 2 chocolates for her Kings Road store. Now, I was quaking in my boots. I was just literally at the beginning of my chocolate career, but she heard that I was making fresh chocolates, which weren't in existence in London at the time. And by fresh, totally stripped back. No invert sugar syrups, no compounds, no flavorings, real ingredients to be made now and eaten within the next week or 2. And the chocolate sold out. And she said, you need to meet Kate Johns. Kate has a food PR company called Nudge. And she'd invented or founded National Chocolate Week. At the same time, Chantal had founded, with some other people in the industry, the Academy of Chocolate, and they had their first World Chocolate Awards. And Kate encouraged me to enter the chocolates that I'd brought her to go, these are my chocolates that I've made, very early days. And she said, you have to enter them. And I did. And my sea salted caramel won a gold award. It was the first sea salted caramel to win a gold award. That was 2005. So before anyone had had it. But there were other people who'd entered sea salted caramel as well. So it was one of those chef things. It was there, and people were playing with it. And I won some other golds and silvers. And that was the spur to then spend the next year building up the recipes, a brand, packaging, and I bought everything from Keylink back then. So this was 2004, when I started 2005 building it. At the same time, I was doing other jobs as freelance product developer and teacher at a cookery school. But that's how it started, because I couldn't buy the chocolates I wanted to eat, which was, if I wanted a raspberry truffle, I wanted it to have raspberries in it. Yeah. And that's where the whole ethos for the company came from. Fresh is best. Make small batches really often. I'd seen it in France. I was going to Paris a lot for my patisserie career, because that's where the innovation was coming from at the time. And the chocolate shops had a workshop, an atelier below, above or behind. And on a few of them, I could see them working behind it. And I thought, why haven't we got that? Nowhere. I couldn't see anywhere where the shop at the front was made with the chocolates at the back. And the first shop we had the kitchen below. In the middle was the shop, and above is where I lived. Oh, wow. And that's how it started.
So it really was an all-in-one operation almost.
Yeah. Oh, it really was. I mean, there are lots of benefits to living on site, and there are lots of negatives living on site. Yeah. The smell, you have 24/7 chocolate. You can put the hours in. It wouldn't have worked if I'd had to commute. Yeah. At that time, remember, it was before social media. It was April 2006. Facebook was still fairly early. We really had to do it tangibly by adverts, posters, windows, people, networking before work, networking after work, to build up the interest to see whether we did have a successful business ahead of us. And you don't know if you have, but you do everything you can to make sure you do the best you can.
I mean, you were quite well known for using a particular brand of chocolate, which we supply here, Valrhona.
Yes, well, yeah.
What is it in particular that you enjoy about Valrhona? What really attracted you to that after getting into chocolate from the very start? Was it the flavours? Was it the company itself? What was it?
Well, I was very clear on the style of chocolates I wanted to make, and I didn't want to make the Belgian style or the Swiss style, which at the time were kind of whipped cream fillings, buttery fillings, quite big chocolates, thicker shells, lots of pralines. And I wanted to make chocolates that could seasonally change, which meant not having enrobing lines, not having machinery, doing it by hand so I could make 100 chocolates or 10,000 chocolates, but not be defined by the machine they were going down. So that was just what was in my head. And the first chocolate I bought, I looked at it, right, what character do I know? I knew Valrhona's character from being a pastry chef, because as soon as I was a head pastry chef, I could buy my chocolate. I could order chocolate in, and I was ordering Valrhona. Now at that stage, Valrhona had a much smaller collection of chocolate, but they had Guanaja at the time, and then Manjari. The Guanaja was a staple, 70%, fantastic chocolate. But the day I tasted, I remember I moved into a flat in King's Cross, which was the very first development in King's Cross that was part of a bigger picture. If you've seen King's Cross now, it's incredible. Where Waitrose is now in King's Cross, you like it from Coles Drop Yard, was the roller disco I used to go to. I know. I loved a bit of roller disco. And that roller disco was there when I had my shop in 2006. But I had a flat there when it first was started to change. And luckily, very luckily, the developers had put stone worktops in the kitchen, polished. I was like, wow. I could temper on this. This is where, honestly, where it all came. I could temper on this, couldn't I? And I remember getting my first order. It was a 3 kilo bag of Araguani, Manjari, a 3 kilo block of Guanaja. And it was doing what many people watching now do, starting at home. And all I did was, I went, I don't want to make Belgian chocolates or kind of Swiss chocolates. I want to make British. And I'm going to pull everything out that I don't think needs to be in. So I'm not trained by any chocolatier, because I didn't want to learn not the wrong way, but the way I would eventually abandon. So I thought, right, I will practice tempering till I can temper everything at every kind of environment. I will make ganaches, I'll make caramels. I mean, family and friends tasted a lot of chocolates for me. But I had to trust myself. I wanted a thin shell. I wanted it to be elegant, but I wanted it to be pure. So I just took everything out. So I said, no glucose syrup, no sorbitol, no trimoline, none of these things that were being used. I wanted to try it without and make it like a piece of patisserie. You buy a croissant today, you eat it today. You buy a lemon tart today, you've got to eat it in a couple of days. You buy a brioche today, it'll last a few days. I wanted fresh chocolates that you came in, you bought, you eat, and if you loved them, you came back. You didn't take them home and save them. And that's where the unbelievably monumental task of shelf life testing began. And everyone listening will probably know what that can be like. Yes. And it's a long, slow road, but you have to do it to ensure that what you make today tastes the same in 2 or 3 weeks or even months' time.
So would that be your advice for people starting out? Do something that you enjoy, so you're passionate about it. So make the flavours that you enjoy eating, so that you're passionate about those flavours that you're making.
Don't make anybody else's.
Yeah.
Take inspiration. So if you are, there's a difference here. If you're a pastry chef, lots of chocolatiers were pastry chefs. So we know a lot of the processes and the kitchen environment. If you are at home right now thinking, I've always wanted to do it, or I have been playing at it, and I don't know all of the techniques, fine. Google, do a class, do a workshop with me, do anywhere, lots of places do them, and learn the technique part. So if you're really nervous about caramel, learn the few techniques. But then when you go home, just sit down and go, how can I make that ganache my signature? What is different about me? What food am I influenced by? And don't be afraid to do exactly the same flavors and style as somebody else, but do it in your way.
Your way, yeah.
You can always sell a praline, you can always sell a champagne truffle, a dark chocolate ganache, a milk chocolate ganache, a caramel. We will all want the classics all the time. Then you just adapt those recipes into something a bit more unique. And be brave, don't be shy, test it. It comes down to lots of recipes. Keep a notebook. Just be really clear. Recipe 1, date it. That recipe doesn't work, cross it out. Recipe 2, date it. So that you know when you've got to your, however many recipes it takes, which was the best. Yeah. Now that is the biggest bit of investment out of starting your small business, because once you have perfected all of that, you're buying your chocolate and you're using it to make the recipes that work. So there is some investment at the beginning, which is can be called wastage.
An investment of time.
Time and product.
Yeah.
I've heard this a little bit. I've bought cheaper chocolate to practice with, and then when I've got the recipes right, I'll go and use a good one. No, you can't. You've got to start with the chocolate that you are going to use. I would say buy a cheaper chocolate if you want to learn to temper and just use it over and over and over again, rather than a single origin high value, expensive chocolate. But go in there confidently with the chocolate you want to use and stick with it. The investment is worth it because it will be authentic at the end, and your character of your chocolates will come through eventually.
So I suppose on that basis, chocolatiers have their own character of chocolate a lot of the time, and that's what makes a fantastic chocolatier. Do you think for someone starting out, they should stick to one brand? So you're quite well known for using Valrhona. Should chocolatiers be looking to expand brand-wise and flavour-wise, I suppose, if they're starting out?
It's a very good question. I started out with Valrhona and stuck with it, but I very quickly then bought some Michel Cluzel from France because I couldn't find a character in the Valrhona range at the time. And I bought a variety called Los Ancanes, which was very green, like very verdant as a chocolate. And I couldn't find anybody else with that character because I was trying to make a very green chocolate with like fresh basil leaves and mint leaves. So my core range was developed with Valrhona chocolate. And that became my signature the initial chocolate people tried was that chocolate. And then they went, oh, that's Paul's signature. Then I started to filter in others. Don't be afraid to have a mix. Don't be afraid to have, if you predominantly can afford Calabao, but then you want to bring in just a few of the Valrhonas as single origins maybe, don't be afraid. Calabao aren't going to be angry with you, personally, unless you've got an agreed agreement with them, as an ambassador or something, they will be. You can mix and match. It's absolutely fine too. It might work for you that your house collection is made with one producer, but your signature, special, limited edition, exclusive collection is made with Valrhona. So you balance the two out. So you can mix it up, but make it easy for yourself at the beginning. It's hard work developing a collection. If your character is Valrhona, because you've tasted it and you like it, go with it, stick with it, if you can. And then start to explore others. Don't make it too complicated at the beginning.
Yeah. So I suppose the main thing as well, taking away from that, some people might not work with Valrhona because, as you said, there is a certain cost point. It's a little bit more pricey.
It is expensive. It is.
And people become a little bit nervous, I suppose, in that aspect, like we talked about before, about how you don't want to make that initial approach with a high purchase and you might want to work with a cheaper chocolate. What's your advice to people who are nervous with working with something like Valrhona? Well,
I would never disregard or insult any chocolate producer who's making chocolate. It's not an easy thing to do, especially at the moment, and there's a price point for everybody. But you have to taste. And if you have a few producers' chocolates in front of you and you taste them and you go, oh, I do prefer the Valrhonas, but I really should go with the cheaper one to increase my profit, then those chocolates won't be you.
Yeah.
You have to go with the Valrhona. And the way to make that work is you start as you mean to go on. You cost it well, as in, if you're undervaluing yourself and you look cheap, people will think you're cheap. And you don't want to do that with any couverture from any producer. We have to educate everyone to know if you're hand making, how long it takes, the ingredients, commodities have gone up, the chocolate's gone up. And if you are in love with Valrhona, every person that comes into your store or buys from you will feel that. If you like it, they'll feel that. And if you don't really like it, they'll feel that. You are going to rave about it if you love it. Like you can't not show the passion for it. And consumers pick up on that. You have to be proud to use, you don't have to, I've heard of, I won't say any brands, but I've heard people say, oh, I just use so-and-so with that. Oh, I only use so-and-so with that. Like they're apologizing for not using a better quality chocolate. Because there is a hierarchy of like pricing with chocolate. Small bean to bar makers that I'm selling couverture can be 24 to 30 pounds per kilo, but that's from a really small farm maybe, really limited amount. Anything limited is more expensive, but that could be just a one-off special. You're going to make 20 boxes of it and sell it at £50 a box because it really is super high-end special. or you bring it down and you work with your chocolate and you be savvy with it. You work in a way that means you get the best out of it. But that comes with making sure you can make great ganache that has the shelf life. You can temper so that you're not wasting any chocolate, or tempering it not over and over and over and over and over and over. You're using it effectively. Learn the skills, learn the fundamentals. Stay passionate about the brand you like, but don't make something with something you don't love. It won't work.
So what's your process when you bring in a new chocolate for a new range? What's your process of getting to know that chocolate?
I've had this process for years, well, decades now, in that when we're young, really young, our parents will probably give us food over and over and over again until we either like it or not. And if you don't, you don't. If you do, you do. But the first time you try it, you might not love it. So I have a 2-week rule. You get some, if you don't commit to a big bag, a 3-kilo bag, and your supplier, if you guys do a sample bag, and it has got 10 little fevs of chocolate in, which are the little beans of chocolate. Chop them up and taste them over 2 weeks. Morning, noon and night. It sounds like a commitment. I mean, it's chocolate. It's not a commitment. No. It's not. Have a sheet of paper. I'm still very tangible. I do a lot on paper still. I then transpose it onto computer, but I like writing stuff down. And I'll taste it. Sometimes I'll write notes. If I taste it immediately and go, love it, I'll write love it. I'm not being technical. I'm not trying to be, there's whispers of morning mist and blah, blah. No. This is honest. This is honest. Yeah. Is it chocolatey? Is it smooth? Is it fruity? What does it give me? And if you look after 2 weeks, you'll have a really interesting document of whether you love it or not. If after 2 weeks I don't like it at all, I probably won't ever use it. There's no point buying it to maybe use it. Yeah. If I like it, it's probably because I want to use it as part of a recipe. If I like it, but I would something I would eat every day all the time. If I love it at the end, that's going into 4, 5 or 6 products. That's the secret. Don't buy one couverture for one product. You need to buy it and be able to use it, because if you use it over a few products, your customer will learn that particular couverture, that particular chocolate is used across a few different things. And if they love it too, they'll buy those other things because it's made with it. But if you only have one thing, they'll only buy that one thing. Yeah. And that's what I do. It's 2 weeks. You go on 14 dates, one a day, and either it's going to last or you ditch it. And that's how I do it. Sometimes it's immediate though. There are some Valrhonas that are immediate. The Hukabi, the milk, the dark milk, that was an instant, I love this chocolate. I could taste it every day for 2 weeks, of course, but I knew pretty instantly that my brain went, yes, I could use it for this. I love it. I like it. It ticks my character, and everybody has their own character. That's why we all like different things. However, you can't be so personal that you exclude it because you don't like it. Yeah. You have to go, what do my customers want? So there are some chocolates that I bought from other producers that I don't enjoy to eat until they're made into something finished, because the character of it works with those ingredients. Take time. Take a bit of time to get to know the product inside out. Taste it melted as well. Yeah. It tastes different. It melts on your tongue. So sometimes when you're tasting ganache, it's still a liquid or an emulsification. So taste it melted too. Taste it with tea. Taste it. Just live with it as part of your everyday, and see if you love it.
Do you find that's a good chance to get a bit of inspiration for what you compare with that chocolate as well? When you're tasting it every single day, it gives you a chance to really think about what other things you could use with it.
Well, if you think about what you eat over 2 weeks, in and out, you might be in a restaurant, in a bar, at home, and you're tasting that every day, something will trigger. You might even just simply have a bit of chocolate and then take a swig of your tea and go, oh my God, that works so well with tea. You wouldn't have had that. Yeah. So it does help to live with it for a while. I just don't ever take taste tests seriously if the person doing the taste test has tasted it once. I just don't believe you can know unless it is totally against your palate. I know that it doesn't matter how you deliver avocado to me. I know I'm not going to like it. I don't do avocado. I can't like it. So I know. But with chocolate, it's not like a specific chocolate is going to be vile unless something's gone wrong. The beans are burnt, or it's been moldy or something.
Yeah.
It's important to be inspired. Inspiration comes from being alive and experiencing the chocolate at all times, day, night, and with the food you eat.
So it's the character of the chocolate, really.
Well, the chocolate has character, and our tongues are unique between us all. And every bag of chocolate has tasting notes on it. And that's a guide. You have to just have it yourself and trust your tongue. And if you don't know how to articulate what it tastes like, go back to basics. I like it. I love it. I dislike it. I love it. Can't live without it. Three terms that means, if I can't live without it, you love it. But you don't know why yet. You don't know if it's because it's caramelized, it's butterscotch, it's earthy, or it's woody, or it's acidic. Just take it way back to basics at those beginning days, and by the end of it, you might go, do you know what? That is really vanilla-y. It's really fragrant.
You build on it, don't you?
You do.
Yeah.
So I suppose you talk about, loving certain Valrhona chocolates. What is it that makes you love the range, that makes you continually, after all these years, go back and say, I'm working with Hukambi today, I'm working with Tenerife Lacti. What is it about the range that you love so much? It's
not just about the range, it's about the company. You have to know that they can deliver the same quality week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out. You have to. You have to know that that is going to be there. That's the first thing. You have to know that you're going to get reliability from the product, flavour-wise, texture-wise, and that's always been there. And as when we've tasted the chocolate, they're all incredibly different. So there's no, you have Valrhona's character within their equipment, their blending, their roasting, but they're all very different. And also, if you haven't tried one for a while and you go back to it, you taste something different. And there's a lot of information. They're transparent. You can get a lot of information off their website. Anything you have to get to know the product has to be consistent messaging and deliverable. So you know that when you're going to temper Manjari today or in 6 months' time, it'll perform in a similar way. That's important. You need to know that before you open the bag.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you the difficult question about shelf life now. We obviously get a lot of customers asking about extending shelf life and balancing kind of customer demand for a long shelf life. You've often talked about your water ganache and how that has a very short shelf life and you need to eat those pretty quickly. How do you manage your customer expectations for that kind of thing? Anybody that comes in saying, I want to keep these for 6 months, how would you manage that expectation?
Start with the message from day one and don't veer off the message. If you say it's 2 weeks, it's always going to be 2 weeks. That is it. And have it in different formats. Have it on your website, have it on your social media, have it as a printed slip you put on the box, have it on the ingredient label. Just have it. And say, that's because I don't preserve. If you're not preserving, that's because I'm using fresh ingredients. That's because my chocolates taste better to eat within 2 weeks. And you could say, for my chocolates, after 2 weeks, the flavour disappears, the flavour becomes less prominent. You just have to stick at it. If you are wanting to make long shelf life chocolates, there are a few ways you can do it. You can add glucose syrup into your ganaches. You can reduce the moisture, whip in butter, use a UHT cream, which I've used before as well. That increases your shelf life. Add a little bit of high ABV alcohol. You can add acid powders like vitamin C powder or lactic acid powder. There are many others as well, and there's some are process based as well. But you have to be consistent. You can't jump in and out with sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's a month. You have to be consistent and say, this is why, but also a 6 month shelf life chocolate is a completely different product than a 2 or 3 week chocolate. And you decide on your business. Are you going to make in bulk and store them so you can pull from them over months? Or are you going to make them regularly so they're as fresh as they can be, because that's how you want to run your business, which is what I did. We did it in that we would make smaller batches. I mean, the smaller batches got bigger as the years went on, and you make them regularly and have a very strict stock control system.
So if you were wanting to make a longer shelf life recipe, how would you test that? How would you determine the shelf life of that product? Do you have a process that you use?
I do organoleptic testing, which is you make your finished product as it would be in the store, down to the decoration, everything. Enough to taste longer than you need. So if you know you want 2 weeks, then taste chocolates for a month or more. And every day at the same time on that day each week, You test it and you look out for taste, texture, flavour, mould growth, cracking, any spoiling at all. Write it down. And if you get to a point where you know it's changed, go back to the point where it hadn't changed.
So make the batch again and then taste it again?
No, just stop your organoleptic testing.
Right.
So say you got today 28 and you went, that's not right. But then I've looked at my notes and number 10 is the best, but actually it came down to a number 7 a week ago. You then work backwards and you go to where
it was at its
absolutely
best.
at its best. And that could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is. But be consistent. That doesn't mean every chocolate's going to have a different shelf life. You then have your whole collection within the shelf life of your shortest chocolate. So if it's 2 weeks, everything's going to have a 2 week shelf life for a mixed box. But if you want to do just a box of champagne truffles, they're going to have a longer shelf life because the alcohol is a preservative. And caramels or solids, you know, a Russia will have the shelf life of the nuts, you know, because the chocolate's got a longer shelf life than the nuts generally. So it's a little bit of to and froing and keeping very accurate documentation.
Perfect. I am going to ask you a slightly more difficult question now.
Oh.
We've talked about pricing in chocolate, and obviously there's a lot happening in the world right now with the price of cocoa shooting up. I suppose, have you got any ideas that customers can use to adapt during these times? Because while people are being very creative with how they use the chocolate and how they can fight these kind of cost rises that are happening, is there anything that you could pass on to customers that they might be able to use? You
have to be savvy, and you sometimes have to adapt your products. The one thing you can't do is shrinkflation with your products, because if you're an artisan, and you can't then go, oh, I'm using a more expensive chocolate, I'll just change everything to a cheaper one. That's the wrong way, because consumers will know they've got used to your level, to your variety of chocolate. Often you have to just be honest with your customer. There's a lot in the press in a minute about prices going up, and say, we are going to have to increase prices, but you can give them a little incentive. You could say every box bought has got a little 5 gram taster with it, so you could try something else. It's very little, won't eat into your profit margin very much at all. Doing it well. Look at your product range. If a lot of them are high process, high labor, you can't change the price of cocoa, but you can streamline and look at your own processes. You can negotiate with some of your fresh suppliers if you're on other things like dairy. You might find a better way of buying it. You might find a better way of bulking up on it to bring the price down. You might look at shelf life and say, well, I do want my chocolate to last a little bit longer than I do right now without changing the flavour. You might increase your low labour products. So there might be more bars in your collection or moulded items in your collection, which are shorter labour, longer shelf life. You may have to adjust some weights. You know, one of the ways is if your bag of bark, parve, brittle sheets, whatever you want to call it, was 250 grams, you may have to say, this is now 230 grams, and be very honest and sympathetic with your customer. That is a bit shrinkflation-esque, but they're still going to get a fabulous product without any change, without any product development. It's a little bit less product, but everybody is aware now that cocoa prices are going up. It's been in the mainstream media. So this isn't just something that is short-term. This is here, and we have to look at it very carefully. You may then look at your products, and you might just pull back the amount of products you're making, because you can end up making too many products so customers can't choose very easily. There's too much to choose from and you're making too much all the time. Slim it back a little bit and look at what's trending. If you don't make a brownie, why not make a brownie and pop it in? That's another reason for other customers that you haven't attracted before to come in. And be a little bit sympathetic with your customers. They might come in a bit stressed. They might come in thinking the prices are a bit high. Be understanding, be honest, and talk to other people in the industry. Get on forums, follow people and see what they're doing, because we're all talking about it. It's happened before. We've been through recession before. We're British. We don't stop eating chocolate. You could even think about your local area and talking to smaller producers who need the support as well, and asking them. You could say, I have been buying my honey from a bigger supplier, but I want to support a local producer. And in return, if I use your honey, will you sell some of my chocolates in your shop, or can we share some social media to gain traction? So it doesn't necessarily mean lowering prices. You can You can literally network within your local area to lose local producers, to gain more traction and momentum within the business. And use social media a lot.
Yeah.
Be honest, get out there, promote your products. If you're proud of your products, you'll promote them well.
Yeah.
There's a lot. It's a very complex answer, and there's a lot of pressure and a lot of worry right now. However, look at it as an opportunity to look at your range. Are some things just not shifting? Are they just sat on shelf? Is there anything you can do to update them? Is there anything you can do to get people through the door? Once they're through the door of a chocolate shop, very rarely do people leave without buying something.
Yeah.
So make sure you've got something for everybody.
It seems like transparency is key there, making sure that you are as transparent as possible with your customers about everything.
And I think people are, companies like yourselves, you send out, when there's a notification of a price rise coming, we know why. It's in the press. Yeah. So then we have to then go, right, what can then we do? Quite often you can adjust your opening hours, which this sounds like quite radical, but if you are closing at the busiest time of day, sometimes it gets to the end of the day, there's a lot of people coming out, depending where you live. You might adjust your opening hours so that you are open when it's busier. It might not be as convenient for you in your lifestyle, but what if there are more people out in the evening on your lovely street, especially in summer? So you'll open a bit later, close a bit later, because it's we are creatures of habit. We get into doing things the same. We get comfortable with it, but it might be that you can adjust your opening time so that when there are more people around in summer in the evenings. Who wouldn't want to buy some nice chocolates if they're on the way to dinner somewhere?
Yeah.
Or on the way back?
Yeah.
I'm going to have dessert at the chocolate shop, not at the restaurant. Sorry, restaurants. But that might, you have to really look really broadly.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for people that are maybe thinking of starting a chocolate business now?
It's funny, this might be a time where people are thinking, I've always wanted to open a chocolate business, but I'm too afraid to now because of the price. If you're passionate and driven, you're going to make it work. Like, you don't start a business wanting to fail.
No.
It's going to be hard work. It's going to be challenging. Have something that nobody else sells in your area. There's no point opening 3 doors down from a chocolate shop and selling the same thing. There aren't that many artisan chocolate shops in the UK. We're not like Belgium, France, where on every other corner there's a patisserie or a chocolate shop. There's room here for a lot more. And we have the beauty of a very active social media forum, in forum's the wrong word, population, in the UK, where if you put something on, it can gain traction very quickly. Let people know what you're doing beforehand so they can plan, get excited about it. Start small. You don't have to go in there with everything happening at the same time. Test the water. Do not give your chocolates to family and close friends. Sorry, family and close friends, but you won't get an absolutely honest opinion because they want the best for you. They'll say, oh, that's gorgeous. The consumer, people you don't know.
No one wants to give you negative feedback if they're a friend.
They don't. However, but if you're still in a job somewhere, you might not know everybody in the place you work well. Make a few chocolates and give them down. Say, please, and give them a piece of it. Please fill in the card. Do you like them? Would you buy them? What would you pay for them? Simple things. Giving testers. People are willing to give feedback on free testers. Yeah. But it's got to be honest feedback and give it to the people you know the least. So you get to know. Be honest with yourself. Are you ready for the commitment of working all hours when your friends are not and family are not? Are you willing to put in the commitment? Because if you are, it will work. And you do have to sacrifice something. You can't have it all. You have to give up some time. And hopefully it'll be because your products are fabulous and they're selling really quick. Have a personality. Go in there with your story. We love a story. Go in there with it, share it, and have something unique. Everything, even the supermarkets have USPs. End of aisles. That's all their new products. The stuff they're promoting. It's the stuff you see first. Have that USP, whatever it is. If you haven't found it yet, don't launch your business yet. But if you have a recipe that nobody else has got that you think works, you might have something there that you can build on. And don't go all in spending your money on the wrong things. Spend it on the absolute essentials. your production space, wherever you're making it. Make sure you're compliant, make sure you have everything in place. Ingredients, buy the best quality couverture, chocolate and ingredients you can. Start with modest packaging. You don't need to have bespoke packaging made at the very beginning. People can personalize their packaging with you, with the foil blocking service. You're buying stock packaging and putting something on it. That might not be what you want right now. If you're thinking, I want something very bespoke to me, that needs to be a year or two down the line, maybe.
I guess you could just go down the road of having a signature ribbon on a signature coloured box for now.
Absolutely. As long as that message and your branding and everything ties into it, you can update your brand later on. But you want to have the money for the equipment, the space, yourself, and the ingredients. That they're really important. And if you're renting somewhere, make sure that you've done your homework before you commit to that long lease, potentially, and the costs of having a space. We're lucky now, you can sell through Instagram, and quite easily. You can have a shop through Instagram, test the water that way. Maybe do a social media pop-up rather than a physical pop-up, and say we're going to be selling for 1 month only to see whether you can do it and fulfill the orders and enjoy it. Very different, as we all know, from any job. From what's in your head to what their job is very different. And it is when you're making, you go from it being a hobby to it being, oh my goodness, I've got 5,000 chocolates to make today. Can I do it? Can I get them done? That's repetitive, isn't it? What radio station am I going to put on to get me through this? Am I going to have friends helping? Have they got a food hygiene certificate? Or it's literally barrage of questions. But if you preempt that, good. And also the last thing, if you know a chocolate business that you love, offer them a little bit of free help. Go in and say, can I come and help you on your busiest day of the week? In whatever area it is, it could just be packing. See the environment and feel it. And if you come out of that going, oh my goodness, I don't think I could do that. That's being really honest. You might then just stay selling a few boxes of chocolates a month through Instagram. Or you go, no, I'm ready. This is exciting. I'm going all in. There's so many answers to that question. We did it back in 2006 by my business partner, by renting a shop. It was the only way then.
Did you go straight into renting a shop?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I won't lie, it's nerve-wracking doing that. You have to make it work. Like the pressure was, this has to work. But you believe that you will. You have a product that does well. I entered my chocolates into the Academy of Chocolate Awards before having a business at that point. So if you are making chocolates, you're selling them in small scale, and every creative person beats themselves up, well, they're not good enough. No, I could make them better. I can't enter them in, they're not good enough. Enter them because you will get great feedback from the judges. Not feedback, whether positive or negative to you, should build on making it a better product. And that gives you a really good overview of what people think of your products. And you never know, you might win an award. Then when you do open your shop, you've got an award.
Yeah. A nice selling point.
Yeah. So you do have to have a broad view of going into business with chocolate. But like I've said, some of the biggest brands in chocolate, when they weren't as big as they are now, in the 1930s and 40s through recession and World War II, developed more products that we're still eating now, and sales rocketed because we want comfort food in these times of turmoil. It's a really important part. And if you've got a shop, walking into it takes people away from the outside world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's what we're talking about today. We're talking immersion. Eating chocolate isn't it's not just fuel. Chocolate isn't fuel.
No.
Your lunch might be, but every chocolate bar product you have is an emotional purchase. And that emotional purchase is going to make someone or yourself feel better or feel good, even just for a few minutes.
Yeah. I think that's a wonderful note to end on. I think you've summed it up nicely there, Paul. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.